Hi there. Today I'd like to talk about self-esteem and how it controls our emotional response to successes and failures. Uh, so to begin, I kind of want to try to define self-esteem. Um, Self-esteem is really well, it's required in a sense to be self-actualized. That's how Maslow describes it. Uh, Roberts and Atkinson, they both have different ideas about motivation and things like that. But the general consensus is that self-esteem has to do with feelings of self-worth. This idea of self-worth is constantly being negatively and positively reinforced. Now, there's two different ways this happens. One way is by comparing yourself to other people and comparing your successes to their successes, places that you wanted to succeed where they did, and you failed. Uh, even things like looks, even things like how much money they have. Um, it's really kind of a superficial thing, and it's just to kind of make you feel better at that point. And if you really want to have a exercise, you can go around and just feel like you're on a high horse. Great, but that's not a healthy boost to your self-esteem. The second way is by setting high standards for yourself, and you know that also can affect your self-esteem sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. For example, say I set myself a standard that I want to be a straight A student, and coming out of high school, I expect that I'm going to be getting A's in college because I was getting A's in high school, and so I choose the hardest degree I can, and so great. Now, as soon as I start hitting these B's and C's, I start feeling a little bit worse about myself and not meeting these expectations. But then as soon as I hit a class that I get an A, it feels really, really good. And so then I start to, have this idea that I need to meet that level of perfection every time in the future to be able to consistently feel like I'm, succeeding. When really, maybe I am, and just, mess myself up by choosing the wrong major, things like that. This idea of meeting one standard is kind of related to the need to achieve and how that reinforces our feeling of self-worth. If you achieve your standard, you feel good, and if you don't achieve it, you feel bad. Obvious, yeah. But feeling bad might negatively reinforce some of different feelings that you have about yourself, and some of those can lead to different kind of fears, anxieties, even maybe some kind of guilt about not succeeding properly, but it really can affect things. And one is the fear of failure. And some people get really caught up in the fear of failure, so much so that they won't even try to, well, they'll have an idea to change, but they'll be so afraid of failing that they'll just give up entirely. There's some people that, well, me included, I've had this where I'm applying for jobs and I have such a high fear of rejection that I'm putting my neck out on the line. It's kind of stupid. Like there's nothing I'm losing by sending out an email or a job application. It's just kind of, if anything, they feel great about it. They be flattered. They're like, hey, someone's interested in what I'm doing. One way we can deal with these fears is by rationalizing mistakes and identifying whether or not things could have been changed. Now, mistakes are kind of the way I think of mistake is a decision had to be made, time passed, and then you either regret that decision or not. Um, or, yeah, I guess that works because you can either have not made a choice and then regret that not making of a choice later. And those are two different things. But those both kind of deal with this idea that mistakes are really a human thing. And some people have this expectation of themselves that they will never make mistakes, that they'll be flawless, that they will every time perform perfectly. And to me, that seems silly because there's an engineering term for it. It's called human error. And those that do not accept that human error is a thing end up getting themselves hurt even. Like if you think that you're never going to make a mistake and so you don't secure your harness correctly, you could fall, things like that. This idea of classifying a mistake as good or bad, or maybe wise or unwise, or, you know, successful or unsuccessful, really can be kind of self-destructive at points because it might have been out of your control. There might have been factors that you had no influence over, and that was the reason that, you didn't have success. Now, that might be the case, but you still need to be aware of the mistake and be aware of, gain information from that mistake that you made in the past and how that can affect you in the future. And by doing so, you should feel a little bit better about the same problem the next time it comes up because you are now more aware of it and how you handled it in the past. It's shown up again, you're ready for it, you're going to knock it out of the park. It's one of those things. That really helps build, this idea that you can be successful even if you have failed or even if you've made a mistake. You give it a shot again, this time with that knowledge. And, that some people just are too afraid of failing to even try to take that first shot and make that first mistake. But, you really need to if you're going to try to be competitive and try to make something new. So the final idea I really want to talk to you about is the idea that you can really improve yourself by acknowledging your errors and mistakes. And that's a very powerful thing to do because once you've heard criticism, accepted it, changed yourself, you probably not encountered the same criticism again unless you didn't change successfully, and then you can change more. And you know, it it really actually does help your feeling of self-worth. I keep saying that, but being able to understand that failure is not always your fault can be hugely impactful to people's self-esteem. And I think that people get too caught up in worrying about making mistakes and failing in general, and it really holds almost society back. So basically, that's what I got. There's a ton more in the paper, but I had a really tough time condensing everything into this 8 minutes. So thank you for bearing with me. I know my sound is really terrible because of my fan, but I really appreciate this psychology class. I I'm coming from a STEM major, so I'm not really I haven't psychoanalyzed anything. So it's really been a good mental exercise, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.